Hey, good evening. Good evening. Hope you all like that intro. Good job, Earl. Welcome to the Chalkboard Conversations Podcast. I am your host, Atiba, and in a few minutes, I will be joined by my guest, Moe Vela. He is a he was a senior advisor to Vice President Joe Biden and currently is a surrogate for the campaign, who's given over 200 interviews this campaign season. He's got a lot to talk about. And in the second half of our show, my distinguished co-hosts, Nayada, Earl, and Seldom are going to join our discussion. But first, we're going to get into my editorial segment, This is America. And this week's topic is 2020 fucking matters. So many of my white friends have apologized for not speaking out earlier on issues relating to Black Lives Matters. And some have asked me to help them to understand. And the way that I respond to that is, you're not looking for an answer. You're not looking to understand. You're looking for an answer to try to calm your fears and ease your discomfort. One of them even went so far as to tell me that I couldn't talk to them that way. And to which I responded, 2020 is a year of awakening for you and for me. And you can't tell us where to sit, where to walk, or how to speak to you. See, 2020 fucking matters. It's an awakening to, without asking permission, take down statues, demand legislation, hold businesses accountable for a racist past. Our spirits were awakened by George Floyd's cry for his mother's help, as if our souls were reconnecting with our ancestors' cry for freedom. And that was freedom from the knee on our necks. If you multiply 20 by 20, you get 400. There's been 400 years of beating, maiming, lynching, and killing. Freedom is what we've been asking for, but freedom from what? The laws that allowed you to literally cut off our slave hands and feet for trying to escape your corrupt virus of slavery. Laws that allowed you to leave your woman's bed and rape ours, forcing your blood into our family line, making all of us a dysfunctional family. Yet that wasn't enough for you. You broke families apart. You ripped innocence from children and left mothers heartbroken, fathers unable to protect their families to fulfill their desire to be a man in that family. All of this to build your desire to build a country you claim is yours and not ours. See, the freedom that we're talking about is the freedom from the slave patrollers who were hired to protect the thieves, or us, the so-called property, the slave from escaping in the night. It was that hunger for money that is as evident today as it was then. The culture puts money over the well-being of people, and that's what we keep seeing every day with the stories of death from a pandemic that your greed won't allow you to see, by putting the police first, and it's destroying the country you claim to love so much. 2020 fucking matters so much that you refuse to let Harriet Tubman, a Black woman, appear on your $20 bill. A woman who was so elusive, stealing your slaves to freedom that you issued a reward of $40,000 for her capture in 1849, whether she was dead or alive. And if you take that into today's economics, it would be $1.3 million. She's pretty expensive. You couldn't let Colin Kaepernick peacefully bring attention to police brutality and racial inequality. It was like, how dare this nigger of white and African parents raised by white parents speak against you? Yet his graceful gesture has been repeated globally, even in the halls of Congress, which once legislated the very laws that allow slavery to exist. 2020 does fucking matter. But if you don't get it, try this. I told you 20 times 20 equals 400, but now add this. 1619 to 1865, there were 246 years of slavery. From 1865 to 1964, there were 99 years of Jim Crow. From 1968 to the present day, 52 years of redlining, mass incarceration, and police brutality. See, the issue today is not about these largely peaceful protests. The issue is 400 years of a violent system that never was meant to protect Black Americans. See, 2020, as awful as a year as it feels, is providing clarity by showing the world the racism in America. We've turned a corner and we won't go back. So now, how do we keep the momentum and make congressional Democrats historic legislation to reform police departments a law? We've got to vote in numbers that are too large to manipulate to win more than just the presidency. We need to win the Senate, the House, the state legislatures, the governor's races, and city councils. See, 2020 fucking matters. Look at the drastic political shift after electing the first African-American president. When you have power, you must then work harder to keep it. If you feel uncomfortable with my words, imagine how uncomfortable 20 slaves stolen from Africa felt in 1619 aboard the ship called the White Lion. For them, it was a ship from hell. And when they docked on Port Comfort, there was no comfort there at all for them. Ever since, it's been uncomfortable for the mother whose husbands and children were ripped away during slavery. uncomfortable for the grieving mother who loses her child to another police officer. If you're white and feel uncomfortable, imagine how we felt while you were silent these 400 years. If you want to help, do something. If you have children, make sure they have Black friends and others who are of color. Invite them into your home for something other than a party. If you have Black friends, invite them into your home just to hang out. Listen to them. Don't try to absolve yourself of guilt. Use your discomfort as a way to grow from it. Remember, America is a promise unfulfilled. She has a great deal of emotional baggage. She has potential, but a long way to go to fulfill her promise that all are created equal. But together, we can do this right now because 2020 fucking matters. This is America. So, right now we are going to go into our segment. I'm looking to see if Moe is with us. Yes, we got Moe Vela with us. Moe, let me give you all a little bit of background. Moe is a longtime Washington insider, and his leadership and counsel has been sought by some of the country's top political and business leaders. He served in President Obama's administration as the Director of Administration and Senior Advisor in the Office of Vice President Biden. And we are very, very happy to have you with us tonight, Moe. How you doing?
Well, Atiba, honestly, after that, I'm just profoundly affected by what you just said.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to do this segment and just be as authentic and speak from my heart. Last week's was
my brother, when we first met, I remember having lunch with you in Rhode Island. And, to me, when you put it in the context and you remind us of this profoundly painful stain on our history here in the country, which you so accurately have described has never gone away. And, you just hear it when somebody was raped or their child was taken from them or they were treated as proper. I mean, God, when you put it, it's overwhelming. And how anybody can't today feel and understand that pain. You don't have to be Black to feel that pain. That's my message tonight. Somebody asked me the other day in a media interview, and I finally just lost it on Sunday morning, NBC Philadelphia. I was debating that Trump man, and I just finally lost it after 312 interviews. I just couldn't take it anymore. And as you saw, I just looked in the camera and I said, this is personal. And I hope I didn't offend any African-American in Philly on that morning, because what I meant was, like, as a Hispanic, as a gay man, I can't understand what it is to be Black, but what I can understand is what it is to be bullied and called a spick or a fag or be disenfranchised. And so I'm not comparing the pain. Trust me, I don't want anybody listening to think or accuse me of comparing. It is incomparable. But what I am saying is, for God's sakes, it's about empathy. It's about understanding that if you've ever felt any pain, multiply it by 1,000,000. How can somebody not be able to do that? But we all know the answer to that. We're living with the Trump cult.
Yeah.
That has not an iota of empathy, not an iota of compassion, not an iota of love or kindness or inclusivity or any of the others. Anyway.
Well, Mo,
what a beautiful statement.
Thank you very much.
Profound.
I appreciate that. And, I want to, of course.
Anybody watching Atiba, I do want to tell them I don't cry at every single podcast I do. I promise.
And I want our audience to get a chance to talk to you and even ask some questions regarding you and the work that we need to do. And I think oftentimes that we're asking candidates what they are going to do. And I really like the fact that we have in our clip coming in President Kennedy, because one of my favorite quotes from him is, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel that where we are right now with this 2020 election is that we cannot wait for a candidate to excite us. We have to do the work on the ground.
That's exactly
to make
right.
this all happen.
Well, that quote is more, in my opinion, might be more poignant today than it was on the day that he said it. In the situation and in the environment that we find ourselves in, so divided. By the way, everyone on these interviews I do in the media all over the world always ask about politically divided. No, we're not politically divided. We're divided right now, in my humble opinion, by decency versus hatred. We're divided by values right now. And this is what I would say to anybody listening or watching us tonight. What can you do? We've got to go out and make this an election about decency and kindness and inclusion and equality. And if you don't believe in those things, then vote for Donald Trump. But at least we know exactly who you are. Exactly. Maya Angelou said, taught us, I don't want to misquote the incredible, indomitable Maya Angelou, but something to paraphrasing her, believe somebody when they tell you who they are the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
You just tell me once you're for Donald Trump, and let me tell you what I know about you. You might not be a racist. I'll give you that. You might not be a racist, but you sure the fuck are an enabler. You're a fucking enabler. So, and you heard me say that on that debate Sunday morning. I
did. So let me ask you this. So in terms of this election, I mean, there's a lot of attention that's being focused on the presidency. I think that not enough attention, in my opinion, is being focused on the Senate. We've got like some really important races going on in South Carolina. We see what's going on in Kentucky. We even see Colorado now. So what is it that, if you're not in one of those states, what is it that, our audience can be doing to prepare for November? I'll just personally put it out there. I'm concerned with what I'm seeing from the president as it relates to possible mail-in ballots, particularly where we're going in right now because of the pandemic. We had really long lines right here in D.C., which is only a city of 700,000, on our primary day, June 2nd. And then we saw the following week long lines in Georgia. What is it that we can be doing to pressure our elected officials on the ground to make sure that doesn't happen on election?
What's the common pattern that you just described? It's in communities of color where the voter suppression is occurring. So what can we do? We can't wait till early voting. We can't wait till the week before, and we can't wait till election day. Right now, tomorrow morning, we have to hold our local elected officials accountable. We've got to here's the other thing, Atiba, that we have to do. We have to go to our churches and our neighbors and wear your mask and stand 6 feet away from them. But we've got to go down the row in our neighborhood, and we've got to make sure every person we know, every person we used to work with, that we still work with, that we love, that we go to church with, whatever it is, role they play in our lives, we have to tell them right now, this is the election of our lifetime. That's how serious this is. When you saw 4 or 5 African-American men hung from a tree this week, and those people didn't commit suicide, give me a break. So this is beyond serious.
And one of the topics we're going to be talking about tonight, too, Mo, is not just what we've seen in terms of these hangings, but also the fact that Senator Rand Paul, in my opinion, had the audacity to hold up the legislation on this particular issue. So he held it up, and then right after that, we see literally within days this happening.
Yeah. So Atiba, here's my new methodology. This is what I hope that whoever's watching, if you agree with me, take this little formula I'm doing now. I am calling people out, number one, and I am putting them through a nightmare guilt trip. Right? So you know what? You tell me, come on, step up. You were a big mouth when you wanted to call me the N-word or a fag or a spick. Okay, now let me tell us. Let's know. I want to know. You for him? So then I'm going to out your ass. And you know what? I can say those things because I'm gay, right? So I'm going to out your ass. I'm going to out your ass because you're an indecent, hateful, divisive, vile human being. It is that simple.
Okay.
So I encourage anybody that's listening, call people out. No, the days are over when we are going to just sit back and let them do all those things you described in your opening. They're doing it to us again, but not in that same form. It just looks a little different.
It does.
It looks different in the form of voter suppression. It looks different in the form of pitting African Americans against Latinos, gays against this one, Christians against gays. And you just go on and on and on. That's what's happening today. So tomorrow, everyone who's listening, get up and call people out. No more. Enough is enough. That is what we need to be doing. Sorry.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
I'm pissed, Nayara. I'm pissed.
For a few minutes. So I know you're not going to be able to stay on the whole time, but I wanted to bring in my panel. I got Earl, we've got Nayara, and we've got Seldom Seen. And we call him Seldom Seen because you won't see him.
Wow, that's an interesting mystery.
It's actually working pretty well. But I wanted to give them an opportunity to join this discussion with you, Moe. And Moe, before I get into open this up to them, I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. I mean, over 300 interviews, that's a lot.
Absolutely. That's real powerful.
And for being a voice, because we need a voice, but we all have to figure out, too, how we're going to pull all of our voices together, amplify our voices, and become one voice against the fact that we recognize what's going on. We don't want this division. Yes, we have a story past, and it's not all pretty. I mean, that's basically what I was trying to say, or what I am saying in my editorials. It's not all pretty. But if we don't talk about it, then we continue to allow it to be whitewashed. And
that's exactly right.
It just needs to be painted the same way that we've seen businesses paint their fronts black. Is the same way that we need to paint this history black, so that people recognize that slaves didn't just give in. We were fighting. We were trying to escape. There was a reason why there were slave patrols.
That's right.
We didn't just give in. We fought. And so every time one of the famous things in my family and that I heard growing up was every time we catch up, they always change the rules. Well, we got to put people in place that are going to make the rules equitable. Yes, we should all work hard, but make it equitable. And at the same time, recognize that getting the power is just the first step. Holding on to the power is the harder part.
Mo, let me tell you something. You got me riled up. I'm ready. I'm raring to go.
Come with me. Let's go together.
Yes.
Let's go together.
Yes.
You know what I like? And you know what you just said, Atiba, is so profound, because you just said, you know what? Nope. People, we just haven't been talking about it. Right? It's like we all know that happened, and we all kind of even know that it's still under there, and now it's come to the surface. And I liken it to the other day. I went out on a date with this guy, and he said, I said, are you openly gay? That's my new question, because I'm like, I'm like, if you're not, then you're already ashamed, and right. And I know this is not about being African-American, so I don't want anybody again to be mad at me. But I liken this concept to this when he said, my parents know, but we just don't talk about it.
Mm.
And when you just said that is exactly what popped into my head. It's the same concept. Like, well, we all know there's systemic racism, but maybe if we don't talk about it, it'll just go away. It's the Donald Trump. Right. There's only 15 people with COVID. It's going to go away in about 2 weeks.
If we don't test, we won't.
Somehow we don't talk about it. It's going to just miraculously disappear. Well, guess what? It doesn't. Right? Right. I have to hear Seldom Seen now. I'm like,
so Mo,
you just open a can of worms.
Mo, you don't want to get me started. I don't know if y'all hear me.
That's an inside
joke.
Hear you.
So Mo, you don't want to get me started. I'm already on a time regulation based upon Earl and Atiba's lecture yesterday. So real quick, I want to point something out. We have 139 days into the election.
Yeah.
Okay? And you've been around long enough to remember the soccer moms, the concepts of the voters coming to the polls, the NASCAR dads, and I think we're in the culture of Karens now, which means is that people are no longer stepping aside and allowing people to rant towards them about injustices or unfairness based upon where they stand in a line, how they walk in front of their car. So I'm seeing the evolution of the science of confrontation, like you were saying. And I think the other thing in the brown community especially is that voting is still very spiritual, because as Atiba rattled off 1968 is only 52 years ago to now, brown people still don't outwardly talk about how they're going to vote. They simply go do it. And I think one of the ways that they've been able to destabilize the vote last time was to make it almost unattractive to do it. But then I go back to Atlanta when Stacey Abrams was up, and black folks basically stood in line. They bought water, they bought chairs, they bought food. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to get back to that moment on a campaign I worked on years ago, where we actually had people watching people's kids until they were able to vote. We've got to create that early fabric, just like in Mexican communities, for example, of when folks had to leave the field to go vote, somebody stayed to work to make sure that things were carried forward. We've got to have a holistic way that we going to vote, because we know it's going to be suppressed. We're going to be distracted, and it's going to dissuade us from voting. So we've got to put systems in place. So we have 135 days to figure out that we know we're going to be in line for a long time. But we know we can't get out of line.
Yeah. You know what? You just inspired me to come up with a new phrase.
What's up?
You know, you asked me, so what do you recommend we do in these next time? Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes.
Preach.
Yeah, whatever it takes. If we have to stand in line, bring a sandwich, well, let's bring 5 extra ones and share them with the people in the line. Whatever it takes. That's how bad and serious the situation is. And you said something very important. You know, because you know what? I like that you are calling out the elephant in the room, which is, look, I know I am humbled by the privilege that I got to work for Joe Biden directly, that I consider him a close and personal dear friend of mine and Dr. Biden. So I understand that puts me in a different situation in the sense of having a very deep affinity for the Bidens. But I also am a political scientist and been in the business for years. And I appreciate what you said earlier. Not everyone's excited. No. Okay. And so instead of like, again, maybe if we don't talk about it, it'll go away. Instead, why don't we talk about that and let's do whatever it takes to get people excited, right? I think it's about connecting the dots for people. Sitting home on this election is very different than the one in 2016 when they sat people out.
Absolutely.
Right? Funny. The effect is the same. The effect is the same. It's just you have to be a special brand of disaffected to not vote this time.
That's exactly right.
You know, apathetic, yeah, absolutely. But you almost have
consequences, Earl. I would only say the consequences may be different, Earl.
Agree. Yeah. Agreed.
That's the only thing I would, say respectfully, that I think the consequences are more severe in this time than
because it says that the behavior we just saw doesn't necessarily keep you from being reelected.
That's right.
I tried to explain to somebody the other day that I don't care what the stock market just did.
That is exactly right.
I don't care about any of this other stuff. And even if he'd handled COVID flawlessly, which of course he did not, but even if he had, what happened in Charlottesville alone? A president saying that within his first year and getting reelected?
Out of here.
That cannot be this country.
Have to be consequences, Earl. That's what you're saying. There have to be consequences or it normalizes the behavior.
Without question.
One of our viewers just said this. I'm excited. Pilar said, I'm excited because we have to do, quote, whatever it takes, unquote. So that's it. I think
it's catching on.
I think that's something that will excite people, is that we have to do whatever it takes to change. Because when I think about President Obama, when he came into office and the train was moving in the wrong direction.
That's right.
So the economy was off kilter. So he had to get on the train with he and his administration, slow down that train, then get the train to turn around and then go back in another direction and then get it to pick up full speed.
That's
By
right.
the time he had gotten it back to full speed, then this...
Insert expletive.
And
he did it. And he did it well.
And Atiba, I'm gonna say this. And thank goodness we got Amtrak Joe back leading the charge yet again. And one thing I also want to say that is so profound, Mo, you being a political scientist, you remember in the 1960s, and my mom used to sing this song when she was protesting, "You Ain't Gonna Turn Me Around." And it was a spiritual song that you sang as you went to the polls. And I think that's the kind of spirituality we're going to see this election cycle more than ever. But I'm excited about Joe Biden because he can turn this around and get us headed in the right direction.
I hope so. And, you know, I think that what the vice president brings, frankly, is he brings that empathy I mentioned when I was talking to Atiba first. We are in pain. We are a nation in serious pain right now and in serious anguish. You know, this is going to piss off a lot of folks, I think, and maybe even all of you. But as much as I find his supporters vile and revolting, and frankly, I've unfriended all of them, and I refuse to talk to any of them. So just for the record, but they're in pain too. And that sounds weird, but there is psychologically, mentally, and spiritually, they are in severe pain.
Right.
Because it takes a lot of pain to hate.
Yeah. This is true.
It takes a lot of pain to be fearful because somebody's skin color is different, or because they love somebody of the same gender, or they were born male and now identify as female. It takes a lot of anger and pain to hate at that level. And that's what they do. They hate.
And they hate as a defense mechanism for accepting what could be possible. As we always say from time to time on this podcast, Mo, we always talk about the browning of America, and that scares them. As I always joke and say, is if you go to the Midwest and you go to a Walmart, you don't know who child belongs to who these days. Because that's the new America. And I think their hate is tied to a very antiquated fear that they will be left behind if things kind of keep going the way that they are. But that's the great thing about America. There's enough seats at the table for everyone, so you don't have to start counting the chairs to make sure that you still have a seat. Because I'm
so glad you said that, Seldom Seen, because that is a very important point to both our Black and brown communities. Again, remember, folks have been trying to divide those two communities and keep them apart. I just was smiling while he was talking with that kind of wry, like, you know, evil little smile I had right there, because my thought was, you know what would scare the hell out of all those Trump people? If Black and brown people started dating and marrying each other and producing Black and brown babies together. That will just absolutely rock their little world, wouldn't it?
It could. But I would also say,
plus the children would be gorgeous.
Well, I don't want to. So I do want to just submit this really quick to everybody. There's also another segment, and I think probably larger than a minority among that Trump group, that's just negligent. I don't think there's an active hatred. I think there is as long as I stay in my bubble, I work my 9-to-5 job. I don't come over there. You don't come over here. We're good. We're happy. And what's different about liberals, especially this particular generation of liberals, I'm not going to lie. I'm liberal, and it still comes to the left of me from time to time. And it's one of those things where, no, I want to live in your front yard. I want to tell you I'm going to now explain to you what's right. And I feel that one of the things that I think helped Joe in this previous election, well, the primary space, was that it was a lot less telling people how to be more liberal or being appropriately liberal. It's just about getting back to being a decent person. And that, I think, runs right down the middle. You know this from working political campaigns, and I say it all the time. Campaigns are not the LSATs, they're a popularity contest. You win the same way you'd won homecoming queen or king,
right.
But no one cares if you got the curve busting score in calculus. So when I'm watching this, when I'm watching this, because I've been both. Well, not the homecoming thing, didn't do that. But I
Oh,
definitely
you? Huh?
no. Again, I didn't learn how to make friends until my 40s.
And
Wow.
there's still a curve there.
Thank you,
There's still a curve
Atiba.
there.
Well, listen,
Being the old one in the group, that means
Yeah.
I'm making enemies now. That's not very comforting.
No.
But
You're making the right
But
kind of enemy.
negligent. There are a group of people who specifically they'll vote for Trump because it seems less existentially adventurous than their current existence, and so from that negligent
It's
point,
in their comfort zone, in other words.
yeah, exactly to the
But-
point where
and that's equal to the people who won't vote at all.
Yeah,
it-
that's
it-
right.
But
It
you
is.
know what's different about the Democrat Party this time? And Mo, and just let me go here with this. Is Jim Clyburn not the Howard Baker for the Democrats? Is he not the true elder statesman for the Democratic Party in terms of how he got Joe Biden to be relevant again? Is he not the referee that Howard Baker was for the Republicans throughout the 80s and 90s and even standing in front of the Supreme Court when Al Gore had to concede? Is he not the person who has made the biggest difference in terms of the leveling off we have and the enthusiasm we now have at the ground level? Let's talk about what a true Democratic elder statesman means right now.
Yeah.
Because we've never had a seasoned person like this since Ron Brown's plane went down. So this is the reemergence in a way, just bear with me. But that's what I'm really saying. So
I think the grace and the only thing I would disagree with you on is that Howard Baker can't even hold a stick to James Clyburn, right? But I understand your point. I agree with your point. I just want to point out that Congressman Clyburn, the grace and the class and the poise and just the have my shit togetherness, it's just, I couldn't agree with you more, Seldom Seen. I mean, he is absolutely an elder statesman in the party. And listen, I have not spoken to the vice president about this, but I think I can safely say I'm sure he knows that without James Clyburn right now, he would not be the nominee of the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
and that's what you're talking about. But you're talking about grace and you're talking about character. And that's the one thing that I am seeing in this cycle more than anything else is that grace and character has kind of seeped into how we're conducting ourselves, the level of discipline that folks are having, knowing that the election is coming and knowing that they know what they need to do. And they're not breaking ranks like we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Yeah. I want to get in a comment from one of our viewers. Kevin Bryan said, I think you all raised an interesting point. There are two efforts afoot here. On one path, we need to do the work to win this election. On the other, there is a need to find ways to bridge the pain that exists among us, particularly that pain among seemingly opposed communities that actually come from the same place of oppression. How can we do those simultaneously?
Oh, what a great point, and what a great way to explain it. That's what I was, telling you, Atiba, early on when I was saying I didn't, and I'm so glad Kevin just said that because that makes me hope that he didn't misunderstand what I was trying to say as a gay man or Hispanic, right? That it's about that place of oppression. What a beautiful way to say it. If you've ever felt disenfranchised, if you've ever felt oppressed, if you've ever felt left out, right? If you've ever been bullied, right? Like I tell this story all the time. And again, I am not making a moral equivalency here. Let me be very clear again. But let me tell you, when I was 17 in South Texas, Latino, knowing that I had this secret in 1978 Texas in America that was Catholic, Latino, son of a very popular politician. And I quit playing football because the juxtaposition I couldn't survive. Then my football players turned on me, and every day in between classes, they stood outside my classes to call me a faggot every day for 6 months of my life.
Oh, no.
And about 6 months into that, I actually contemplated committing suicide. And so to anybody listening, it's not honestly, I'm not equating that experience to slavery. I'm not. But what I am trying to point out is that I can't understand how anybody cannot understand that pain, that is what we all have in common. Different levels, yes. Different profoundness, yes. But pain nonetheless. Or Kevin just said, that place of oppression.
Yeah, and let me just say, so Kevin, since while you were talking, Kevin said, no, Mo, I totally feel you. Pain is real, however way you experience it. And then Carl says, I am a Republican, but I campaign for Hillary. The purist test kills the Democrats' message. Nevertheless, I am voting for Joe Biden. Democrats should just stop with the purist test. We might not agree on everything, but what we agree on is important. I think that's
agree with Carl more, honestly. I'll tell you an example. I don't mean to be hogging up your dad.
Oh no, you're fine. You're
the guest.
I know, but this is supposed to be a panel discussion, and I'm taking over like a dumbass.
But we want to hear it. We want to hear what you have to say.
So let me tell you, this is Nayara, this is one that might, like, you're going to go, okay, we're never inviting him back. But when Tara Reid's accusations against my beloved Joe Biden came out, I did probably 30 to 40 interviews in every major publication you can imagine. Why? Because I was the director of management to Joe Biden in the White House, which included human resources. So I had this, so I was able to speak from a place of knowledge that I never saw, heard, observed, not one iota of behavior like that. And it would have come to my desk, right? So I was on the media. Here's the part you might not agree with me on. But to the point that Carl was making about being purist, when the Me Too movement happened, and we saw the Weinsteins of the world, and by the way, that was not just male and female. We saw Kevin Spacey, same thing, male on male. I'm sure there's been female on female. It's about the power dynamic and about controlling another human. And I was so happy that the Me Too movement, women rose up and said enough is enough. But here was my concern. When the pendulum swung with the Me Too movement, it didn't stop in the middle. It swung to that purest point that Carl is alluding to, where all of a sudden, Tara Reid, according to the Me Too movement, we just had to believe her. And I went on the air all over the world saying, no, we do not. Does she have a right to express her allegation? Yes. Does she have a right to feel like she was violated? Yes. Do we as a society and a nation have a responsibility to listen to her? Yes. But it stops right there. Then she has to prove her allegations. Here's what my analogy is to Carl's point. If in the court of law in the United States, the only thing I remember from law school, trust me, the only thing I remember was that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. If that's the rule in the court of law, then in my opinion, it should be the rule in the court of humanity.
I want to bring something up along those lines. First, I'm going to tell you. So Pilar says, but pain is pain is pain, and maybe through the commonality of our pain, we can find a commonplace way of healing. What I want to do is
love you, Pilar.
And this is not to say anything, in terms of from this standpoint, what we're talking about, but it is to show how the media perception has become reality and has hurt. There were a number of African-American politicians that were hurt greatly by COINTELPRO. And
by who? By what?
So there was
COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program for the FBI.
Yeah, there was a thing where it was just putting out an allegation about an elected official. No proof, no nothing, just put it out. And it damaged a lot of people's careers.
Yes. And that's the purest aspect that Carl is alluding to, right? Where we got rid of Al Franken. He didn't even get a chance to say much about it. We got rid of Al Franken. He didn't even, to this moment, I'm not entirely sure I know the whole story.
That tipped the powers of, that tipped the Senate. And the Democrats have to stop undermining their own.
Yeah.
And when that Al Franken thing came out, and the other senator, the junior senator from New York, went after Al Franken for something that was so murky and started demanding and sacrificing him.
Terrorist.
And then 7 weeks later, there's a book out talking about these platitudes of "I'm here for you." That is what we Democrats have a terrible tendency of doing, of sacrificing in order to prove a point to somebody who doesn't care
That's
about the
right.
point.
That's
And
it.
we go hungry weeks later. And that is the thing that drives me crazy. When I look at the Senate, we need an Al Franken right now. Do you know what an Al Franken will be doing to Donald Trump?
Right. It would be
But that's why they had to get rid
airworthy.
of him.
It'd be on airworthy every time he did it too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Patrick is a good example of one of the things I will say about this. I apologize for that. When speaking about the difference between the left and the right, in my experience, at least my observation is that the right will overlook a flaw if it's on their side of the fence, as long as they can trust the whole person. Basically, I agree with him on 60, 40, sometimes even 20% of everything else he's talking about. But that 20%, like maybe my federal judges, I care about. So now I don't care if he lied about sleeping with a porn star, then backed up with it, and then went with it again. Did I get my judges? That's all I care about. For the left, we will shoot at our own because it means that we're above reproach when we come shooting for you.
It's it's our own moral authority problem.
It is.
But you know what? But you know what? I mean, okay, so we're gonna bring it back to.
But it's normally rooted in something that we care about. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's bring it back to black and white. And here's the unfortunate part. The reason why these black men are being killed in the streets by the cops or at home or in their cars or wherever is because they don't see them as a whole person, and they don't see them as, you know what, they just made a mistake, or you know what, it's this small issue. But when it's one of, a white person, a white boy.
Well.
They're just boys being boys.
Yeah.
And see them as
you
that
think
person.
about Charleston, South Carolina, when that boy shot up them feet, killed them 9 saints praying, he got Burger King.
Right.
And when Rashad fell asleep in Wendy's, what he get? He ain't get no burger.
Death.
Well,
yeah.
And that is it. I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sheldon.
No, what I was going to say was, this is the whole thing about when you look at people in America and you look at how people look at each other in America, we have a grading scale or a curve. We reinforce our stereotypes of what we expect of other people.
Yeah.
For example, we see an Asian person, we think they're better in math. When we see a black person, we think that they're up to no good. When we see somebody with red hair, we think they're Irish. When we see somebody who speaks Spanish, we think they're Mexican. Right. It's not always the same. We've got to stop looking at our neighbors, our peers, and our friends on a scale and accept them for who they are and what they are, instead of always projecting upon them what we think they should be. And that's the same thing now. Black men in America have been living under this very, what I call the free race syndrome since King Kong came out. Like, we're so much bigger, so much more powerful. Yeah. And when you look at the physical scale and size of these officers who've been involved in these shootings, you're talking about a 125-pound weakling who wouldn't even make Moe's high school South Texas football team. And all of a sudden, their reaction to any and everything is that they have to be more aggressive because this black man is bigger than them. Well, and that is something that we've never gotten past.
I'm going to throw something in that doesn't get part of the narrative, and then we're going to go through real quick, Mo. And if you can stay with us, we're going to go through a few topics. My issue with the officers, I'm not saying that all officers are bad. What I do feel is that we're not calling them out for what they are. What you said, Earl, what you said, Mo, earlier is call them out. These officers are cowards. In every one of these instances where we see them putting a knee on the neck, chokehold, all of a sudden, it's so you felt that your life was threatened. But when I'm looking at that tape, I'm not seeing your life being threatened. 80 to 90% of the time, I don't see your life being threatened. You just use this idea of qualified immunity that allows you to continue to look like ask a question later. So it's like shoot first, ask later, and that's got to stop. I actually also think that these officers, if the moment that they start taking, instead of taxpayer dollars to pay these wrongful lawsuits, they start taking from their pension funds, all of a sudden you're going to see something change. Mm-hmm. With that all said, now, Mo, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do know that the former vice president has said that he's not for defunding the police departments, but right here in Washington, D.C., we just had a city council hearing where about 90% of the people who came and spoke for defunding it in a certain way. And I'm just going to put this out there, that one of the issues that we have had here is there are 3 unsolved murders of African-American men by police officers in the last 2 years. The body cam footage still has not been released. One of those mothers, Marquise Alston, yesterday filed a lawsuit against the Metropolitan Police Department. And on top of that, the police chief went before the city council to ask for an additional $19 million next year.
Yeah.
For next year's budget. So there are all these things that are kind of coming together. I think that part of the issue with the defund movement is that it has not yet been correctly articulated in the
That's
message.
right.
But
That's
I think that the direction that they're going in to say, look, we are funding, for instance, here in DC, $550 million police department that continues to increase in budget, and yet they're not giving the same or the emphasis that we need to interrupt crime in terms of other social service programs or education. And one of our candidates, a friend who we just had on last week, Janice Lewis-George, has been a strong proponent for this. She's a former assistant attorney general both in Philadelphia and here. And I think that this is a narrative that we're going to continue to see. I will say this, I have no problem with saying that I am definitely for Joe Biden. And what I keep trying to tell people that hear him say things that they don't like is he is one of the few, if any, politicians that I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen him and I've talked to him in private, where I've heard him talk about how people moving things moves the needle and helps it make it easier for them as a politician to do the work.
That's right.
He is one of the few, if any, people that I've ever seen who has changed positions over time on different issues. And he definitely goes in the way of the majority of people. So if we do the work, then it makes it harder.
That's right.
Easier for him to do that work that we want him to do.
He evolves. This is the beauty of Joe Biden. He evolves and he listens and he will. I say the same thing to people at Atiba when they say, well, I don't like his stance on this. I'm like, listen, if we get him in there, the one thing I promise you, he's going to invite you all around a table and he's going to listen. Yeah. And if you give him evidence and ammunition to change and give him a different perspective, he listens. I've briefed him hundreds of times in my life, right?
But I'm sorry.
Atiba just moved to like a modeling headshot.
Yeah. That's a whole.
I do want to say something about the defund the police, if you don't mind, just real quickly to just share one thought on that. I agree with Atiba 100%. The problem is that it has not been articulated probably in the most effective manner. From a different perspective, I'd call it a branding problem. Okay? Yep. The defund the police phrase is a horrific brand.
Thank you.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Yep. Right? That's the problem.
Thank you.
Because that I have not heard any, I really haven't. Maybe I'm not listening carefully enough. I don't think anybody means we should never have a police force again. That is not, I've not heard anybody say that. That's a Republican's, well, I'm not going to go there. That's a Republican's dream.
Well said. Well,
yeah. That's a Republican's dream for them to be able to say, right, that we think there should be no police. Donald Trump said it this morning, right? But here's the deal. What we've got to define is what we're really trying to do with this, I think, with the defund the police movement is simply say, investing the same money in the same way to the same people is going to have the same result. Right?
Yeah. And I think one of the...
Patrick, you go first, then I'll jump in.
So one of the things that I always remember, right? One of the things that I always remember about this whole experience, Mo, I'm trying to overlook that right now, but one of the things that's so fascinating when you talk about Joe Biden, and when you have empathy and you've been through things in your life, you're forced to evolve. And I will never forget the stories of him and those boys being by themselves, and that point of empathy that he has. So when you've been through something, then you understand that there's something, you come out of things with something. And I think the second thing is that, like you said, it's just bad branding. And the Republicans are the masters of giving people words that they easily identify with. And it becomes something that people kind of have to kind of focus on. It's almost like in 2004 with God, Guns, and Gays and all that whole hoopla and all that stuff. But one of the things I will say is that just like in Prince George's County today, the county executive took $20 million from the police department and put it in the mental health services. Those are the types of things when you're saying defund the police. Reallocate the resources that you give to law enforcement for certain purposes. The second thing was, out in Minneapolis, they realized that all of those small-ass police departments have all of the military vehicles from the war sitting there. They have ammunition clips. Demilitarize your local law enforcement agency so they have a different solution and a different way of reacting to things. Ferguson was the best example that we had of how small police departments can get out of hand rather quickly.
Okay, we got a few more minutes, and I want to get into a couple other things. So we talked about the lynchings that have been going on in Senator Rand Paul, but did you all, Mo, did you get a chance to see, I think my co-hosts all did you see the Dave Chappelle special?
846.
846, I sure did.
All right, so we're going to do a quick piece, and to our viewers out there, if you have something you want to say about that, I will just say this. I thought it was brilliant. I thought, here you have a comedian who got up there and he was very serious and eloquent in terms of what he said. The thing I love about Dave Chappelle, he just says it directly what it is that I think many of us were already thinking.
He also called people out.
Yep, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. I'm telling you, I admire him. I'm a big fan of his, and I thought, listen, he took a huge risk by doing that, not because he's telling the truth, because he got serious. That was contrary to his brand.
Yeah.
But I think it made us all listen to him in a different way because we're so used to him making us laugh. Right. And coming from a whole different place, and to see him get serious and intense and passionate about a very important and serious topic. I don't know about you guys, but I was just like riveted.
But the great thing about Dave Chappelle is that's what he does. Like if you go back and you look at all of his other stand-ups, he's told these 10, 15, 20-minute stories. Those are jokes in there, and it gets back to the point. And so he already has the command of dealing with those issues.
What a talent.
But this one it was not funny. It was
personal. It was
and he called out Don Lemon, and he called and
it's Don Lemon, but Candace Owens was the one that, Don Lemon, sometimes he claps on beat, sometimes he claps off beat. Don, I'm okay with Don 50% of the time these days.
And that is not normal for a gay man, I just want to add. He usually clap right on beat.
So wait a minute, are you saying wait a minute, what is you said Don Lemon or D? Okay, I get confused, Mo. But one quick question. One quick question I had. I looked at the 846 being equivalent to when Richard Pryor came out and basically dissected the N-word and said, I'm never using this word again. Yeah. It was on that same line. And that is the height of party albums for you in 1974, 76, or the early, when he came out and said it, I'm never using the N-word again. I realized what the word meant. I realized what the word was doing to people. I can't use it again. That was equivalent to that there was everything for me.
And the beauty of it is the evolution, watching the evolution of people who do have a voice and people that the public listens to.
Yes.
And going back to Joe Biden, to be able to make that change and say,
Absolutely.
Know what, I've grown. I'm not here anymore. I'm not there anymore.
That's right. Listen, the Obamas did it, Nayada.
Exactly.
The Obamas did it with gay marriage.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
We don't have enough time.
And Jeremiah Wright.
We don't have enough time, but maybe we can have another time together.
And
I'll tell you a little story of it when I was working for the Bidens at that point. And the Bidens had been for gay marriage for a decade already at that point. Mm-hmm. But the Obamas weren't there. I shouldn't say Mrs. Obama wasn't there. I think she was, but the president wasn't there yet. Right. And that was a really fascinating time for me, to the dynamic was amazing. Yeah. But Barack Obama evolved.
Yes.
He listened. Yes. He learned. He felt.
Yeah.
He experienced.
Yeah.
And then he was there.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just, again, that's the problem with this existing man. He doesn't
Oh,
even.
I love that one. Existing man. Yes.
I don't want to call him a man. Keep going.
Yeah, calling him a man is generous.
That might have been the kindest thing I've said about the
I
asshole.
was about to say, I didn't like the man part. That's the only part I took issue
All
with.
right.
As a
Oh
man,
my
I
God.
didn't feel like he was a decent representative of
rap.
me.
And like
Whatever it takes. Can we all agree? Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever
Like
it takes.
Moderator, I've got to keep us on time, but I'm going to say this. I want to read Madupe, I hope I pronounced your name right, said defunding the police is the only way to force the necessary change in many of the police department policies. It's the same as anything else in America. The dollar dictates. Look at all these companies coming out with statements and policy changes, mainly for fear of the economic backlash. The NFL is the same. I think he's correct.
Yeah.
With that, I'll say we're going to get, we do at the end of our show, Mo, is a lightning round. And so I'm just going to throw out a question and then, you have the answer. And so what I have here is tonight is, what is the hottest contest state for this election?
Hottest contest
state. It's like the hottest state. Like which one do you all think is going to be the most contested state? Like in terms of like Senate race or
Texas.
Okay. And you want to tell us a little bit about why you think Texas?
Yeah, that's my home state, and I grew up in Texas politically when we were blue, and then watched it turn red. And because of black and brown folks, we have a chance to turn it blue again for the first time in a few decades, and it will be because of African Americans and Latinos. If our people will come out to vote, if they'll do whatever it takes, we can turn Texas blue.
And
but don't Hispanics traditionally go red?
No.
Not since the Catholicism.
75%, yada. On the average on a presidential, they vote 75% Democrat. Okay. If you get below 65% Latino vote in a Democratic national election, you typically lose.
And last week we had Kim Olsen on. She's a retired Air Force colonel who's running in the
amazing
24th district.
Amazing. Texas, I think, keep an eye on Texas. We've got a shot at it. It would be, let's just put it this way. If we turn that one over, this thing's over.
Yeah.
Personally, I was hoping
that moment, that night, it would be over if we win Texas.
Personally, I was hoping that the DNC was going to be there. Of course, it doesn't really matter now because of what we're going through with the pandemic. But Earl?
Yeah. Which state do I think is most contested? I think Pennsylvania. I think that when people start talking about this defund the police, I'm going to finish this really quickly, but your talent with messaging, Mo, the fact that you found a way to say the existing man, a guy who knows how to do that is also the same guy who knows saying defund the police is the worst thing you can say if you had moderates on the fence. It's the one thing that we do on the left that we screw up all the time, which is get so caught up in being right that we forget that it's a popularity contest. And you're too quick to say screw you to the people who don't agree with us. So yeah, I would say it's Pennsylvania. And I think if people keep saying defund the police every time they get on a microphone, they're going to hand Pennsylvania over to Donald Trump.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Seldom.
I got to go with the Geechee Gullah people. I got to go with South Carolina. I got to go with Jamie. I got to go with Jamie versus
Jamie Harrison.
LG.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go with, since we do it acronyms, I got to go with LG versus Jamie. We just talked about DL LaDon Lemon. And so I think one of the big things I'm fascinated about that race is that if the black folks vote, if Charleston votes, they got it. If the low country raises the tide, Jamie wins. That is the bellwether for every other state, because as bad as Lindsey Graham has been Donald Trump's surrogate up until recently, he's so far removed from Donald Trump. They had to go get Ben Carson, who they never go get. Ben Carson was on the circuit last week. Lindsey Graham versus
Don't remind us.
His office is right across the street from me right now. I can run over there and pass it.
I'm going to tell you,
Nayada.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with Seldom and South Carolina. However, a contest to watch is not a Senate race, but this is for Atlanta, Fulton County, the prosecutor's office, the DA's office, because right now I mean, it's getting hot down there, especially with these two police officers that have now been charged. Mm-hmm. And the current DA is being accused of, playing politics with that, but he wouldn't have necessarily have done that previously. His former protege, or I don't know if you would call her a protege, but his employee, Fonnie Willis, is running against him now, and there is a runoff. So, that's one to watch and see what kind of happens because, Atlanta's definitely a hotbed for a lot of issues. So,
and they got a mayor named Keisha.
So I'm going to end this.
It's amazing.
I'm going to end this and say go outside the box, and I'm not going to pick a state. I'm going to say the whole damn thing. And I'm going to say it this way because voter turnout is going to be so important.
Yeah.
And I started this off with my editorial saying that we've got to take not just the presidency, we've got to take all the way across. Because if we want to stop the systemic racism that's going on, I would like to see us address sexism, xenophobia, homophobic, all of the things. We can't do
transphobia.
It if we don't have the power. Right, transphobia. If we can't do it if we don't have the power.
That's right.
To our young people that are out there who may be listening, listen, I know that I've talked to some of you who said that voting is not important. Voting to me is the most important part of being in a democracy, next to being engaged after you vote. Like that's the most important part. We can all get this done. We can get it done together. Mo, I want to thank you so very much for joining us. This has been fun. We'd love to have you come back.
Yes.
Anytime.
Yeah, this has been great, Mo.
And you guys, I love you. You're awesome. I love your energy. I love your spirit. I stand with you in absolute and complete solidarity. Awesome. And I'm very proud of what you're doing. And I'm so excited to see you effectuating change by enlightening and empowering your listeners. And if there's ever anything I can do to help any of you, I was
hoping you were going to ask that. So we'd like to get Joe Biden on before he wins the presidency or afterwards. But,
Yes.
Well, I think we need to get you hooked up to my dear friend Simone Sanders, and she might be able to make that happen.
All right. All right.
And we'd like for her to come on too.
We would love to have
Simone Sanders on. That would be amazing.
Yep, we would love to have Simone. Simone's actually been on one of our panel discussions for Party Politics a couple of years ago.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she is.
You guys are all equally amazing. Have a safe, beautiful evening. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Well,
Happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth.
Bye. Yes, I want to know who the hell you are at some point.
All right, with that,
I'm a ghost.
To our audience, if you want to see and listen to past episodes of Chalkboard Conversations Podcast, you can go to spikefish.radio, or you can also go to iTunes and find us under Chalkboard Conversations Podcast. With that all said, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your comments. To my co-hosts, thank you all so much. To Mo, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you again next week, 7:00 p.m., Wednesdays. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, John Boy.